Musk's Wisconsin invasion democracy's turning point or the next step toward autocracy? And the essence of it is, in light of what happened yesterday electorally, down in Florida, we saw the Republican majority shrink by 15 to 20 points. And in Wisconsin, we saw Elon Musk, in particular, decisively defeated. And what does this mean, I guess, is the question everybody's asking. And there are two possibilities. One is it could just be an anomaly, right? It could just be that, this was a moment in time when the excesses of the Trump administration are so visible, where the economy is starting to slide, where Elon Musk's public persona is offending people. This could just be a magic moment that turned out well for Democrats, at least in Wisconsin. Obviously it did not in Florida. The Republicans won both races in Florida, although by smaller margins than a year ago. And my concern is that, in fact, Politicus USA is reporting that Trump is now talking with his inner circle about how to get rid of Elon Musk, or at least how to stop Elon Musk from having this high public profile, because clearly the public hates him, right? The public thinks of him as this. I mean, he's a Nepo baby, a Nepo baby. He's a rich kid from South Africa who was driven to his school in a chauffeured Rolls Royce, according to his father. Apartheid white Africa and white-controlled Africa. And when apartheid fell, the Musk family left, fled the country, and moved to Canada. And then Musk came to the United States on a student visa, but apparently he wasn't a student, or at least during part of that time. So we may even have an illegal immigrant. I mean, God only knows, but now he's a citizen. But, generally it appears that Americans are not happy with him, or somewhere on that spectrum from not happy to outright hate him. So, what happens if the Trump administration simply says to Elon, you got to stop getting in front of the cameras. We'll keep doing the stuff you're doing. We want your money to continue buying elections, but you got to start behaving like Charles Koch. Be the guy in the background. Don't be the guy in front of the camera. Be the guy who funds program after program, politician after politician, who controls the Republican Party. No problem with that, but just don't do it publicly. And by the way, it might help your company. Tesla just suffered a 24% drop in sales, the worst that they've ever had in the entire history of the company. So, it's possible that the Republicans can clean this up and get past it. On the other hand, it's also possible that what we're seeing happen right now is very similar to what happened in 1899. William Clark was a copper baron in Montana in the late 1800s. He owned a whole bunch of copper mines, and he died in 1925. He was worth $5 billion in today's money. The second richest man in the world at that time, behind John D. Rockefeller. And the story goes, according to historians, that in 1898, in the election of 1898, Cooper wanted to become the senator from Montana, the United States senator from Montana. And back then, the 17th Amendment, I think it is, was ratified in 1913, if my recollection is correct, which says that the people of the states elect the senators. Prior to 1913, which includes 1888, if I've been saying 19, forgive me, 1888, 1889, or 1898, 1899. Back then, the senators were picked by the legislature of the state. And so what William Clark did is he stood outside the chamber, the Senate chamber in Montana, with a bunch of envelopes with $1,000 bills in them, and passed them out to everybody who voted for him to be senator. And surprise, surprise, they all voted for him to become the senator, the U.S. senator. Well, when the word of this got to the United States Senate, they said, screw that, and they refused to seat Clark for a year. And finally, the governor appointed him to the next term, and so he served. I mean, you know, at that point it was a legitimate appointment. But the result of this, the consequence of Clark doing this, was huge. I mean, it was a national story, and it produced a major national, backlash. I mean, even Mark Twain weighed in on it, right? So the Senate launched an investigation in 1899. It made huge publicity. This led to the passage in 1907 of the Tillman Act, which made it a federal felony for any corporation to put any money or any kind of support behind any candidate for federal office. That stood until the Supreme Court struck it down with Citizens United. Actually, I think they might have struck it down with the Bellotti decision. But in any case, that stood up until, the recent era. It also informed the 1910 Corrupt Practices Act, which, required a certain level of transparency among political action committees. And in 1912, progressive Republican President Taft doubled the number of corporations he was cracking down on using the Sherman Act, and he promoted the 17th Amendment, which was, like I said, ratified the following year. And the singular goal of all of these changes at the presidential level, at the congressional level, everywhere else, was to prevent Bill Clark's type of corruption, rich guys buying legislators, from ever happening again. And here we are. The Supreme Court struck down all these laws that were passed over the last 150 years to protect us from rich guys buying elections. And why did they do that? Of course, because rich guys had bought the court. They had bought Clarence Thomas. The John Roberts' wife made over $10 million, consulting with and working for big law firms that have business with the court. Sam Alito is getting, vacations and getting spiffed by billionaires and organizations. And of course, Clarence Thomas, millions of dollars flowing to him and his wife, Ginny. So, we've got this corrupt situation. It reminded me of the story that I actually opened my article at HartmannReport.com today with, was back in 1999. I was in Russia. I was working with a German-based charity, and I was staying with a family. The mom was German. She was from East Germany. Dad was Russian. I don't speak Russian, but I'm pretty good in German. And so anyhow, and they had two little kids, a little boy and girl around, 7, 8 years old. And we were all watching TV one night and having dinner. And this guy comes on the screen, and he's like, and this is Russian television, so I can't tell what's being said. And he's yelling, and he's pointing at the screen and pounding his fist, and, he's obviously, passionate and campaigning. And suddenly, Mom, her name was Olga, just breaks out in laughter. And Dad, the Russian guy, he's looking mystified, just kind of baffled. And so I said, in German, I said, what just happened? What's going on here? And she said, oh, that's Vladimir Zhirinovsky. He's the right-wing candidate, and he just said that anybody who votes for him in the election will get a turkey and a bottle of vodka. And by this time, the screen had shifted from Zhirinovsky to a news desk and a commentator lady who was talking very seriously to the camera. And she said, now they're trying to figure out where he's going to get all the turkeys. Like, they're taking this seriously. And she just thought this was the funniest thing. But her husband was like, well, isn't that how elections work? I mean, this was literally the first election in the history of Russia. The first free and fair election, 1999. And so it appears to me that what Elon Musk has done, or is trying to do, is basically just take Zhirinovsky's strategy. Hey, vote for me or for my candidate, and I'll give you a turkey and a liter of vodka. Only in Musk's case, it's I'll give you a $100 bill or a $1 million check. And the question is, will Americans buy this? Are we at an 1899 moment where we're about to see a flip away from all this corruption and all this, wealthy people buying elections, or not?